Now let's focus on the case of Hodgkin lymphoma. You can see that multiple cells have got dark brown intense staining. If you take a closer look, you would appreciate that they are all scattered cells with intense staining and on a higher power. You could actually make out that these cells have taken up intense cytoplasmic staining with accentuation in the Golgi region. This staining of the Golgi region is appreciable as a dot in the paranuclear location. If you see, there are macrophages who have faintly taken up the staining. For example, in this area, if you see, some of the cells are taking a hue of brown. That is because of the imbibement of the antigen due to constant host versus tumor interaction, and that should not be interpreted as a background staining. We will try to see if there is any germinal center and whether there is staining over there or not. We couldn't find any germinal center over here. So let's move on to the other case, that is kidney. Now this is the normal kidney, and you can see that the tubules are nicely stained. The tubular lining epithelium is very nicely stained. And if you see, these are the proximal renal tubules, which have got very intense cytoplasmic staining, but at the same time the distal tubules are not getting stained at all. If you focus on the glomerular structures, you can appreciate that there is no staining. If at all one finds staining, that would be of occasional entrapped granulocytes. Granulocytes are CD15 positive cells, so they should get stained. In some part, there is serration, which has resulted in such frayed staining. That is not the fault of staining, it is the fault of sectioning, so that may be ignored. And you can see there is hardly any background staining, and there is no evidence of any non-specific staining as well. So this forms a good staining of the renal tissue. Now let us check the tonsil. Now in tonsil, there is a scab which is getting stained. The scab is made up of granulocytes and proteinaceous material. so that gets intense staining, so that is to be ignored. Such scabs can be seen in tonsil which is infected. Now if you see the germinal centers, there is hardly any staining evident at this power. We just try to look at them more closely. You may appreciate some degree of faint staining towards the periphery, like here in this case. You could appreciate that occasional dendritic cells are getting stained with CD15. So that is normal. The epithelium has also got faint staining. That is because of the constant interplay of granulocytes in that region, and that is considered an acceptable staining if a participant has got that thing in their staining. And let us see at the last case, or rather the first case in the provided sections, that is a lymphoma. This case was kept with a purpose. In this case we were not able to decide whether to call it a Hodgkin lymphoma or a non-Hodgkin lymphoma, and we just wanted to see how things take shape when rotated amongst the different participants. You could see that some of the cells are getting very faint hue of staining. Some of them, or rather many of them, are granulocytes, and we actually could pass off this case as lymphoma unclassifiable, but Hodgkin lymphoma was the nearest possibility that was conveyed. The patient has been treated with the usual line of management of Hodgkin lymphoma, and he has recovered completely at the end of 6 cycles of chemotherapy. The follow-up would be interesting in this case. So here in this case, for quality purpose, it should stain the granulocytes and occasional large cell with Golgi zone pattern of staining. So that concludes the CD15 part of the analysis.